Welcome in to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we have some games to discuss. First things first, a little bit of housekeeping. I'm recording this episode on Wednesday evening. This will come out, obviously, on Thursday morning. I am going to be out of town down in Mobile for Mardi Gras this weekend. So, obviously, I will be able to see the Tennessee game, which is going to be an away game down in Thompson Bowling, or up in Thompson Bowling. But I will not be able to record the episode quite as early on Sunday, as I will not be back. I'm not going to be able to record that episode until Monday night. So just a heads up, that episode may come out like late Monday evening. It will be out in advance of Tuesday, so that y'all could watch the episode Tuesday, potentially for a breakdown of this Tennessee game, which is upcoming, as well as a look ahead to that Florida game. Just as a heads up, like I said, that episode is going to come out on Monday evening, so that y'all can see that. So just a little bit of a heads up. It is going to be one day delayed on the podcast breakdown for this Tennessee game. But nevertheless, let's talk about the Mississippi State game, and then we'll talk about that Tennessee game that I was referencing. So Alabama played Mississippi State in Tuscaloosa on Tuesday night, and I was in attendance for this one, and it was Alabama's best showing of the year. Top to bottom, offense and defense, this was the best showing in which Alabama had all season. The game started out, a lot had been said about how poorly Alabama had been starting games. Alabama had been, getting out to some pretty bad deficits, 10, 12 points in a lot of games. And even in that Kentucky game, Alabama was down 20-9. They come back, win the game, and kind of win it going away. But Mississippi State, it was just completely different, right? And it started on the defensive end. A lot's going to be said, and we will talk about the shooting from Alabama because it was just an absolute firestorm from the three-point line. But if you're going to talk about this game, the thing that really allowed me to see what this team is capable of is what happened on defense. Alabama was really sitting down and defending, right? It was not a situation where, it was anything fluky. They were sitting down defending for whole possessions. We're forcing bad shots, shot clock violations. We got 8 steals in this game. I would have to look back, but probably one of the most steal games that Alabama's had this season. They've not been a team that gets a ton of steals. And it was across the board, right? Mark Sears has 3. He had an awesome game. Aiden Holloway has 2 steals. Probably his best defensive performance of the season. Just everybody, across the board played really well on defense. And this defense is the defense that, and I tweeted it out, and I'm kind of torn between, part of me is like, this defense is incredible. I love what I'm seeing. And part of me is a little upset because I knew this defense was always there, right? I knew that if the team played to its potential, this is the defense that we had the capability of being. And we just have not been it for large stretches of the season, right? You saw it for, moments in the Kentucky game, but not for huge stretches. You definitely saw it in that Mississippi State game. And it's something that I think that if this team can continue the defensive prowess in which they showed in this state game, and they really showed it for probably 32 minutes. When you're up by 38, it's kind of difficult to play the same level of defense. Nate would say, hey, don't look at the scoreboard. He left the starters in for a reason. I'm trying to, show that we're going to put a team away. But I understand it, right? When you're up by 30, 35, it's kind of tough to not play the scoreboard. So, like I said, the defense is what you have to talk about when you're talking about this game. But the headline that everyone's going to think about when they think about this game is the three-point shooting. And none bigger than Chris Youngblood. Chris Youngblood, we talked about him in the preview of this game, about how he had gone 7 of 10 and had his kind of breakout performance against Mississippi State in Starkville. In my pregame thread, I actually said LeBaron Fallon was going to be the guy, and I was under the impression that Mississippi State was going to key in on Chris Youngblood, similar to how Alabama keyed in on Josh Hubbard, right? Alabama basically said Josh Hubbard is not going to beat us, and they didn't let him, right? Hubbard ends up with 21 points, but he took 22 shots to get there, right? Alabama will live with that any day. But, I assumed because of how well Youngblood had done in that first game, Mississippi State was going to key in on him, and they just didn't. And he had an absolute flamethrower game. He goes 7 of 11 from 3. He goes 6 of 6 from the line and gets 2 offensive rebounds. Plays just absolutely incredibly. Has 27 points. It was a game from Chris Youngblood that we kind of expect, the guy that you thought you were getting when you got Chris Youngblood. The lightning fast release that I've talked about all season. The shooter that's definitely not afraid no matter what's going on. Comes over a screen, immediately puts it up. A physical guy. He didn't finish great around the rim. Actually, his 2 misses were at the rim. But, overall, just a really, really, really good shooting performance from Chris Youngblood. This is the Chris Youngblood that if this is the guy we have moving forward, right? He's obviously been able to channel it against a team like Mississippi State, right? But if he shoots anywhere near this level, which we know he's capable of, right? He's a career 40% guy. But if he's shooting even close to this level, like the level that this elevates the team is just so much higher, right? Another guy that I think you have to talk about shooting in this game is actually Jaron Stevenson. A lot has been said about Jaron Stevenson over the past while. And, a lot was said about taking him out of the starting lineup. And Nate's even addressed it, right? Nate even said, like, hey, I think what it has done, having Mark Sears and LeBaron Philon start with Chris Youngblood, is it's getting Chris better shots, it's getting Mark better shots, and it's even getting a guy like Jaron better shots because you have 2 guys in Mark and LeBaron, or Mark and Aiden, LeBaron and Aiden. If you keep 2 of those on the floor at the same time, they can create for each other. And by them creating for each other, it also allows, Jaron Stevenson and Chris Youngblood to get open shots. And that happened in this game, and Jaron hits all 3 shots in this game. The reason I bring Jaron up is as much as said about how poorly he shot to start the season. And he absolutely did. He could not hit anything at the beginning of this season. He's 41% in SEC play, right? So through 15 games in SEC play, he is 41%. Over the last 5 games, he's 60% on 3 attempts a game, right? This is a guy that is shooting incredibly, incredibly well. This is a guy that, is playing the role that we need him to play. He's been the defender that we know he's capable of, and that a lot of people said, hey, if you're going to keep him in the lineup, it's because of that defense. But he's getting the offense to match, right? Especially during SEC play. He's hitting the threes. He's been a little bit more aggressive around the rim. He's hitting his free throws, right? Jaron just looks a lot better and looks a lot more comfortable. Props to him. I thought that, like I said, I wanted to give him a shout out. I know a lot's been said about how poorly he shot at times this season. And it happens, right? He did start the season pretty poorly, but he has absolutely come on at the perfect time. A couple other guys that, you can't go without mentioning. You had 2 guys in this game get double-doubles. Mark Sears goes 21 and 10. Just seemed to be finding every open man. Seemed to be very comfortable in this game. I know for stretches, Mississippi State was playing zone and all sorts of different things, but Mark seemed to be totally in control. He had a couple of turnovers, but 10 assists to 3 turnovers you will take any day of the week. He also gets 3 steals of his own. Overall, I thought this was, one of Mark's better performances of the year, especially on the defensive end. I thought that he did a very good job being locked in to Josh Hubbard. I thought he did a good job being locked into whoever he pulled. Obviously LeBaron Philon also got a huge matchup with Hubbard. I thought Philon did awesome on the matchup. Really, whoever had Hubbard for large stretches of this game, outside of like I said, a few minutes there at the end of the second half, really did a great job on him. And credit to them, right? Alabama's defense really came to play in this game. Mark goes 5 of 12 from the 3-point line. One of the strange notes about this game is that for quite a while, Alabama was actually shooting better from the 3-point line than they were from the paint. That's something that, with Mississippi State not having the best shot blockers, funny enough, they actually blocked 6 shots, which is kind of abnormal for them. They're not the greatest of shot blocking teams. But, for Alabama to be such a good 2-point percentage team, right? Alabama currently sits number 1 in the country in that stat. They honestly did not play super well from the interior. They missed a lot of layups. Cliff had some dunks, obviously. Mo D did well. Aiden Sherrill had a had a layup, right? So there's some guys that helped, up that percentage. But, Mark Sears goes 1 of 4. Youngblood goes 0 of 2. Nelson just goes 3 of 5. So you had some guys that really didn't play super well at the rim. And so, for Alabama to put the offensive output that they put out, 1.44 points per possession, just absolutely insane. And it was huge to see Alabama do what they did, on the shooting numbers that they did, just was absolutely incredible. The other guy that had that double-double that we have to talk about is Mohamed Diabate. Mo D, to his credit, 10 points, 11 rebounds. I thought that, again, he seemed to excel in this game. We talked about how well he played in the last game in Starkville. It really feels like 2 of the guys that played some of their best games in Starkville played some of their best games again in Coleman. Chris Youngblood and Mo D. Mo having the 11 rebounds I thought was huge. Anytime you have him being able to get your offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, keep the possessions going, started in transition. He even hit a 3 in this game, which is obviously great to see him being able to stretch the floor a little bit. All of the stuff like that, it's awesome when you see stuff like that, right? I can't talk about every single player in this game because this episode will go incredibly long. But just know that every player, no matter who, really played a pretty pivotal performance in this game, right? Cliff Amore gets 4 offensive rebounds, leading the team, has 4 dunks. Grant Nelson, on paper, doesn't have that great of a game. Just goes 6 points, 3 of 5. He has 7 rebounds. But from what Nate says, wins the hard hat kind of going away, right? He did all of the things that you need him to do that don't always show up on the stat sheet and really gave his heart out. Did not practice on Monday. They have been lowering the intensity in practice just to try to get some legs under each other. But Grant even had a shin bruise and so did not play at all on Monday. Did not practice at all on Monday. Still gave just absolute effort. And I thought that across the board, that's the one thing that you can say about every guy that entered the floor on Tuesday, whether it was Aiden Sherrill, whether it's Aiden Holloway, no matter who, right? Everyone gave their absolute effort. And it really showed, right? We talk about Aiden Holloway. Aiden Holloway looked as comfortable as he's looked in an Alabama uniform, and it was not his best shooting performance. But with the ball in his hand, he looked awesome. There were a few moments where it really felt like he had the ball on a string, his dribble moves, was able to do what he needed to do to get separation, use that separation to find the open man. And then, obviously, Chris Youngblood, Mark Sears, able to make the shots when Aiden finds them, right? So that was another thing, really, from Aiden's standpoint. The craziest stat, that you could have looked at in this game, and Max Barr hinted at it, and, the guy who I sit next to, Tony, hinted at it as well. When Alabama had 23s, right? Alabama had 23s made. Aiden Holloway had made just 1. And if you had asked, anybody going into that game, hey, Alabama's made 23s, how many does Aiden have? A lot more than 1 was going to be anyone's answer, right? But Aiden Holloway has just 1. So that shows what the shooting of this team is capable of when they're on, right? And really how well this team has done in SEC play. Because when you look, if we kind of take a glance back, after this game and look at what the stats from a conference standpoint look like, in conference-only games, Alabama's the number 1 offense in the conference. They are the number 1 2-point percentage, right? That goes with number 1 in the country overall for the whole season. They are also number 2 in 3-point percentage at 38% from 3. They do the best job running teams off the three-point line, as well as do the best job taking threes, do an incredible job getting assists, as well as not allowing the other team to get assists, right? Alabama has done a pretty good job in some of the key metrics when you look at conference play, right? And that leads to a game like this where you win by 38, you win going away, and you really are peaking at one of the best times. A lot's been said of, can anyone beat Alabama at this level? I firmly say the answer to that question is no, right? The question becomes, can Alabama continue to play at this level? If this is the team that you see during March Madness, they will be cutting down the nets in April. However, this is a single game sample size, right? So I do not know if this is the team which we're going to see Saturday. I don't know if this is the team we're going to see against Florida and Auburn. I don't know if this is the team that you're going to see in Nashville or potentially in the NCAA tournament. I don't know, right? But what I do know is the defense that we saw, and I don't even mean the offensive shooting, right? Offensive shooting is great, but if the defense that we saw matched with the continuity that we saw playing as a team, whether or not the shots are falling, kind of not all that important. But if Alabama plays at the level that they played at in this last game, Alabama I don't know that anyone can play with Alabama and can beat Alabama. Because, Nate often talks about, I would rather us see, like, hey, whether we're making shots or whether we're not, that should be the difference in the how much we win by, not if we win, right? The best way to look at this is if we were to say Alabama, let's say Alabama only makes 10 threes instead of 22, right? But they take the same number of shots. So Alabama goes 10 of 55. So we're taking 12 threes off the board. Alabama still wins by 2. Going 10 of 45 from 3, right? That right there shows you what Alabama is capable of, even if the shooting was incredibly poor. The margin of victory is what was determined by the 3-point shot, not that the victory happened, right? And that's what's so impressive about this team, right? When they play to this level, they are borderline unstoppable. Just can we see this in the next game? And we will see. But I will talk about that next game here coming up. So now to transition, I'm going to talk about the Tennessee game, and then we'll get out of here. So Alabama plays Tennessee in Thompson-Boling Arena, a place where they have not played super well. Last time Alabama won there was during COVID. It was the Herb Jones team that went 16-2 in conference. That was the last time that they won in Tennessee. For moments, it really has felt like, if you take it in a segment of time, it just felt like Rick Barnes has really had Nate Oates' number. And a lot of that has to do with how physical his teams are, some of the guard play and the, at times inexperience in which Alabama has had, how well they've handled physicality against Tennessee. I think is something that in years past definitely has caused Alabama a lot of trouble. There's no other way to say it. However, I think the difference in this team is a couple-fold, right? One, some of the freshmen that you have that play significant minutes this year, and underclassmen that you have that play significant minutes, have either played there in like an Aiden Holloway, a Jaron, a Mo, and have played there and know what they're getting into and are potentially even accustomed to that physicality. Or B, you have a lot of people that have, plenty of years during playing college basketball, a Mark Sears, a Grant Nelson, Cliff, Chris Youngblood, guys that are physical and are tough and have played a lot of basketball. But then when you even have a guy like Aiden Sherrill, a super physical guy or a LeBaron Philon, a guy that doesn't get rattled super easily, I think that is what is different about this team compared to some teams of Alabama past, is Alabama is just built a little more to go into a place like this, right? The environment is going to be a tough place to play. But I don't think it's going to be any tougher than Rupp Arena was. I don't think that it's going to be any tougher than Mackey Arena was when you played Purdue. Obviously, you lost that game early in the season, but they have played in some tough arenas this season. I don't think this arena is going to be any worse than those. May it be at the same level? Sure. But I don't think it's going to be any worse than those arenas. Another thing that I would say is the physicality Tennessee is going to play with. In some years past, Alabama may have not played quite as physical of teams. However, this is the reason why Alabama schedules a Memphis in the preseason. This is the reason why Alabama, is super happy about playing a Houston in the MTE. You play an Ole Miss, which you may have not played the best against. But some of these games in which Alabama scheduled and played were to get ready for teams like this, right? Were to get ready for teams that are going to hold you as you go through screens. Were to get ready for teams that just play super physical, lean on you, make it a difficult game. So I do think that Alabama is more prepared for this game than they have been in years past, just due to the team makeup as well as the schedule makeup. I think that overall that makes for a better matchup for Alabama this season going to Tennessee. The other thing is Tennessee is just not as good as they have been in some years past. If you look back last season in SEC play, Tennessee drops just 3 games, and they were pretty spread out. Mississippi State, South Carolina, A&M, and Kentucky, losing only South Carolina and Kentucky at home. And really in none of those games did they really feel like, I guess outside of that South Carolina game, did they really feel like they were just being, like they could not score at all, right? However, if we go back to this season, the Florida game on the road, they scored just 43 points. The Vanderbilt game on the road, they scored 75. The Auburn game on the road, they scored 51. Kentucky at home, 73. And Kentucky on the road, 64, right? So their losses are a situation where they have not broken 75 points in those games. And if you look in SEC play, they have only scored over 76 points 4 times. They did it against Arkansas, Missouri, Vandy, and A&M, right? Now, granted, some of those are decent games. This is a situation where you're going to be asking Tennessee to hold this Alabama offense to numbers in which nobody has been able to hold them outside of Ole Miss this entire season. You're also asking this Tennessee team to play offense at a level that I'm not sure that they're capable of. In my opinion, and this is me, the Alabama fan, that has been to almost every game this season, has been watching this team, knows kind of how this team plays. In my opinion, the number to pay attention to is the Alabama turnover number. And the magic number is probably like 13 or 14. If the number stays near around 13, 14 on the game, I think Alabama wins this game and probably wins this game going away. If the number gets above that, I think Tennessee has a decent shot in this game. And the reason I say that is when Alabama has had some issues on offense against good defensive teams, in most cases, it's been because they turned over the ball. When they actually got the possession to the shot, they were okay, right? When you look at the Ole Miss loss earlier this season, Alabama scores just 64 points, but Alabama shot 55% from 2. They had 21 turnovers, right? They turned over the ball on 27% of possessions. It was a situation where Alabama just didn't get the number of shots they needed, right? And that's why I say the turnover number is probably the most important thing to keep an eye on in this game. Is if Tennessee is able to get us out of our element and cause us to turn over the basketball, which is possible, absolutely, then Tennessee could win this game. However, if Alabama is able to not turn over the basketball and play a portion of its game, I'm not even saying be able to insert its entire will. I do think Alabama's going to try to get this game moving a little faster than Tennessee has allowed any of their games to move this season. Tennessee has had just 4 games in the 70 possession range, all of them in the non-major part of their schedule outside of Syracuse. No high major teams have they had get 70 possessions. That's going to be a number which Alabama is going to be pushing for. They're going to be trying to push that pace. Alabama is a bit of tempo proof. The only game they've had this season, they've had 2 games this season in the 60 possession range, and it was Purdue and McNeese on November 11th and 15th. Since then, Alabama has not had a single game in the 60 possessions. So it is going to be a little bit of fight of styles of, can Alabama get the tempo up, and can Tennessee keep the tempo down, right? Part of that is going to impact how this game is played. And if Alabama is able to control that tempo, I think in most cases Alabama probably wins the game. The Florida game got up to 68 possessions. The Kentucky game got up to 67 possessions. And in both of those games, Tennessee did not play well. Tennessee lost both those games. The thing that also, if I'm looking at Tennessee, that's a little different than some of the years past, and I would expect them to emphasize this a little more against Alabama than they are over the course of the season. But Tennessee is giving up a ton of three-point attempts. They're currently 347th in three-point attempts compared to field goal attempts per KenPom, right? About 46% of their of the attempts a team makes are three-point attempts, or takes or three-point attempts. If they allow Alabama to get off that number of three-point shots, Tennessee will lose this game, right? Because if Alabama's getting those shots off, then they're going to be good looks. Alabama's not just going to chuck for no reason. They've shown the propensity in this season to, only take 19 threes, only take 20 threes. So if you see Alabama taking 35 threes, 40 threes in this game, it's because Tennessee is leaving them open at certain points. And if Alabama gets open shots, they will make the open shots, and Alabama will win this game, right? The question just becomes, in my opinion, what style wins out? The other question becomes, if this turns into just a purely half-court physical game, which is what Tennessee would want, who for Tennessee is going to make the shot, right? The obvious guy would be Chaz Lanier, their leading player. He currently is averaging, he currently averages 17 points a game, second most minutes on the team. But, is he going to be the one to make the shot, as he's the only guy on the team over, roughly 35% from three at 41, right? He's a good three-point shooter. Jemai Meshack, right? He's a difference maker on the defensive end. But, is he going to hit the shot? He's, hit some timely threes this season, but he's only made 14 of them, right? He's a solid shooter, but he's only made 14. Zakai Ziegler is at 32%. Has hit some timely threes. I think that they would be happy with the ball in his hands, but he's a very streaky shooter. Milicic, another streaky shooter. Gainey, another streaky shooter, right? The thing with Tennessee this season is, some of their shooters that are fairly high volume, in Ziegler and Gainey and Milicic, they're not great shooters, right? None of those guys are over 32%. With Ziegler being the best at 32.2. Their only shooter that is a good shooter, again, is Chaz Lanier, and their other pretty good shooter is Jemai Meshack at 36%, but again, he's only made 14 on the season. He's a lower volume shooter compared to some of the other guys. So that's just what you have to look at when you look at this team. Is Tennessee going to be able to make the timely shots? And if I'm Alabama and I'm game planning for this game, my game plan is very simple. Make someone not named Chaz Lanier beat me. Because I'm not confident anyone else not named Chaz Lanier can put up the amount of points it's going to take to beat a team like Alabama, right? Honestly, I felt similar about Mississippi State, right? Alabama changed their entire game plan for that Mississippi State rematch because the game plan was Do not, under any circumstances, let Josh Hubbard beat you. I don't care if he takes every shot, don't let him beat you. And make sure someone else is who has to beat you. And that's what Alabama did in this last game. They face guarded him. They gave him the treatment of, hey, somebody else is going to have to beat me. And Alabama ran away with the game. I think, honestly, you do something similar to Tennessee. They're a good defensive team, but if we don't turn over the ball, I think that Alabama can help negate some of that. And then on the offensive standpoint, Tennessee has large stretches of the season in which they go scoreless. Large stretches of games in which they go scoreless. And the person who is the best creator for himself, that does the most and really can shoot his way out of that, is Chaz Lanier. So in my opinion, you put, he's a bigger guy, 6'5". You probably put like to start the game, you probably put like Chris Youngblood on him, put some physicality on him. As the game goes on, I would not be surprised to see Jaron Stevenson swapped on him for large stretches. Mohamed Diabate swapped on him. Just put somebody on him that's fresh and that can give him some length and give him some difficult shots. Because I do think that if I'm game planning for this game, make someone not named Chaz Lanier beat me. And I don't know that Tennessee has the offensive firepower to do this, right? Now, this being said, they're an elite offensive rebounding team. There's other places in which they could do it. They could just do it as a team. But I would make them show me that they could do it as a team, right? Make them offensive rebound the ball. Because Alabama has, again, shown if Alabama plays at the level they're capable of, they out-rebounded Texas A&M, right? Texas A&M is a better rebounding team than Tennessee. They obviously did it in College Station, right? So they've played the games against teams that have this capability. So just play to that level, and I think Alabama wins this game. Now, this goes without saying, this is going to be a lower scoring game than the Mississippi State game. I'm going to give my prediction. I do think this is a lower scoring game. I think that Alabama potentially gets into the low 80s, like maybe 82 to 70. Let's go 82-73. Let's go 82-73. I think there's a world in which Alabama does better than that. Obviously, I think there's a world in which Alabama loses this game. But if you were to have me place money on this game, I probably would give it, 65 to 70% odds that Alabama wins. I am just not a huge believer in Tennessee's offense. And I feel like there was some switch that I can see in the guys' faces and eyes over the last couple of games, and trying to prove themselves on defense and trying to take care of the basketball. And if Alabama plays with the intensity in which they're capable of and takes care of the basketball and on defense, I think Alabama wins this game. And I think that's huge, right? So I do think Alabama can win this game. Like I said, I am going to predict 82-73. Like I said, I will watch this game. For any of you that, again, remember what I said, I'm going to record the recap of this game on Monday evening. It's going to come out on Monday evening. I'll probably record it and then try to edit it and put it out Monday. So if you are interested in the recap or my thoughts, follow me over on Twitter. I'm sure I'll be live tweeting throughout this game. As always, the thread breaking down the players will come out. I should be able to get that typed up and be able to put that out Saturday as normal. As I said, I'm just going to be out of town, so I'm not going to be at my house with my recording stuff. So just as a heads up, I will be able to put all that information out. If you are interested in the podcast, please subscribe to the channel. I do appreciate that. I know a lot of the people watching these podcasts and following along on YouTube are not subscribed to the channel. So if you do appreciate these, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.